Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlickers, shills, dust, lacers, peasants, vassals, minions. I'm a useful idiot. Welcome. And today I want to talk about Syria. And here's another story, just like the previous video I did, that's pretty dramatic, but is getting overlooked because of all the other events in the world. And of course, media picks and chooses what to expose, oftentimes seemingly strategically. And this is a good example of that. So, just like the huge prison assault by ISIS in Iraq that freed 500 Al-Qaeda members. Now we have a huge massacre happening in Homs, Syria. And ISIS, as I did a previous video not too long ago, that ISIS is basically taking over in Syria. So this is kind of a part two of that. But more importantly, this event, the gas fields, in central Syria at Al-Shair. And this happened actually last July 18th. And ISIS assaulted there, once again using all these new weapons that they confiscated from the Iraqi military in Iraq. And 270 Syrians confirmed killed so far, and that includes National Guard, security guards, and workers. 50 of them were executed. A lot of them were beheadings, and another 90 guards and employees are missing, and the death toll is expected to climb in general. So we can safely say somewhere around 400 to 500 Syrians were massacred in this assault by ISIS, and ISIS is now taking over most of the gas and oil fields in Syria, which is also a big story. And another part of this big story is in 2 days, over 700 were killed in Syria in these new ISIS assaults. And these are some of the largest body counts over single-day periods during this entire Syrian civil war. So once again, some huge events going on in Syria, and they are not being covered. And then another part of the ISIS assault in Syria is Raqqa, a Syrian military base, has finally been overrun there, and a Syrian division defeated. And I was struck by the fact that a lot of the tactics they use are similar to what we saw in Abu Ghraib in Iraq, and many of these other attacks, where they start with suicide bombings and then use mortars and rocket-propelled grenades to finish off. Rival militias have been trying to take this Raqqa Syrian military base for quite some time now, and it only took ISIS overnight, especially with all of their new equipment. And so now ISIS is controlling the city of Raqqa, and one of the things we've seen is Raqqa being used as a testing ground for the new Caliphate and how the state will be run. And we're seeing a lot of the same things being installed in Mosul in Iraq now, but in Raqqa, apparently a fair amount of the population is happy with the stability that ISIS has brought, and there's a level of corruption, but it's less than the corruption of the Assad government that used to run Raqqa. And they're managing to keep food and gas available, ISIS is, in these areas, and that also helps to keep the population somewhat satisfied with the new ruling party. But ISIS is definitely installing Sharia law in these areas, including banning smoking in public, and having all-female brigade that goes around and makes sure that women are covered up as per Sharia law as well. But it's kind of interesting to see that the ISIS consolidation, not only are they pushing for major military victories in the field in both Iraq and Syria, but they're consolidating their territories quickly and installing their version of the state, this Caliphate. And interestingly, has some peculiar features, including ISIS now running a tourism and special event bus service throughout the Caliphate. Buses run twice a week on Thursdays and Sundays, and they actually take people on their honeymoons and tour the Caliphate for a lot of Westerners too. So, just an interesting side story about this. But let's get back to ISIS confrontations in Syria. It's estimated that as many as 10,000 new foreign fighters have flocked to ISIS in the last month, and that's something that we've speculated on in previous videos about just how many new fighters will be joining ISIS because of their notoriety and fame. And it seems to be within predictability that they would attract as many as 10,000 new foreign fighters. And then another front in this this ISIS new offense in Syria is going after the city of Kobane. And then this is a Kurdish region, and I also mentioned that in the previous videos. Turns out the Kurds have claimed to have killed over 200 ISIS fighters recently in their assault in that region, and there are a lot of towns that are being overrun, reclaimed, and then overrun. But once again, we're seeing ISIS use weapons that they procured in Iraq from the Iraqi military. So they've used 10 tanks have appeared in the battle against Kobane, and over 3,000 mortar strikes. So as per the acquisition of these weapons in Iraq, they have a limitless supply of mortar rounds as well. But another interesting aspect of this battle with the Kurds and the ISIS is hundreds of Kurdish hostages have been taken, and this is one of the trademarks of ISIS' battle against the Kurds in Syria, and including 130 Kurdish students. So we see these high-profile kidnapping of Nigerian schoolgirls, 200 of them, and it causes international outrage. And yet here we have ISIS taking 130 Kurdish children, and it doesn't even make the news. But neither did the massacre last year of over 450 Kurds by ISIS. But the Kurds are holding their own in the field as we have expected. The militias in the Kurdish region of Syria have superior military capabilities overall, more discipline, and certainly popular support of the region. But they're also getting reinforced by PKK fighters, Kurdish militia from Turkey, and all adults are being armed. And so potentially the Kurds could have 500,000 to field in defending their territory in Syria. So we could continue to see more vicious showdowns between ISIS and Syria and the Kurds. But one of the interesting aspects of this story as well reminds me of the understanding that the Kurds and ISIS have somewhat of a truce in Iraq, so that they can concentrate, that ISIS can concentrate on its assault on Baghdad. And here in Syria we have an interesting strategy of the government. They're reluctant to confront ISIS head on. One of the reasons why ISIS has been able to consolidate so much territory in Syria, in fact, it's claimed now that they control 35% of Syria and are advancing fast. But the Syrian government has been reluctant to confront them in the field because they're trying to reduce their threat to the state while leaving ISIS strong enough to continue defeating other opposition factions, and that's exactly what's going on. The Syrian government is basically letting their enemies fight against each other, which they have been doing. And in fact, around Damascus, opposition spends most of its time fighting not the Assad government, but ISIS. And the other thing that's convenient, having ISIS in Syria and Assad letting them do what they do, is it to help sustain the Assad narrative, which is true, of being under attack from foreign terrorists. And this undermines the narrative presented by the West, although, of course, at this point it's more of a moot point. But anyway, it's for ISIS, the fighting in Syria is not necessarily about bringing down Assad, and one reason why they don't necessarily need to confront Assad in Damascus at this point. It's about expanding their control, creating their caliphate, and consolidating their power in the regions they already have. And And also, while all this goes on, besides the Raqqa military base being overrun and all that equipment now available to ISIS, and then also the gas and oil fields in al-Sharir that have been taken over with the massacre of up to 400 or 500 Syrians, we also have the siege of Aleppo continuing. And this is a city that's split into the Assad government sector, the opposition Free Syrian Army al-Nusra Front section, and now the ISIS section. We also see that siege continuing, and not only that, but also the instigation of Sharia law that we've seen in Mosul and seen in Raqqa is also going on in parts of Aleppo. So here we have it. Huge moves by ISIS in Syria that are not getting any attention in the media right now because there's bigger fish to fry, but these are certainly important events in the grand geopolitical scheme and the future of Syria. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.